Thank you everybody for joining this morning. It's obviously, like I said, a full house. Hoping to talk as little as possible so I can get these guys talking a bit more about what's going on in Charlotte. But just want to appreciate, and call out everybody for being here. So I'm Mark Branigan with Dyknow.
Jake Standish with Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools.
Justin King, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools.
In your titles?
Program Manager of IT Strategies.
Technology Facilitator.
Okay. So a bit more of a kind of a building level view of what's happening, more of a district level view of what's happening. So we'll touch on a couple of those points as we go forward. So the goal here is really to highlight what's happening in Charlotte and not highlight necessarily Dyknow specific things, but there will be obviously some crossover there and how it's impacted the day-to-day in CMS. Agenda, if we want to lay one out, is just for me to give a quick overview of the problem that we solve, how we solve it, and then get into specifics on, from a Charlotte perspective, how it's impacting day-to-day, how they made the decision in the first place, and kind of maybe even how some growth has taken hold within the district and interest has grown and grown. So really excited to talk about kind of all that. Wanted to start with the problem that we solve and why we solve it, how we solve it. The fact of the matter is technology is changing the way that our schools are operating. I know this firsthand. I taught middle school math before I came over to the Dyknow team, and in my student teaching and getting ready for that first day, my kids didn't have technology in front of them. It was just me, them, pen and paper, good to go. And then I show up day one of my first day as a teacher, and I was staring out at 30, 13-year-olds, and they were all staring back into their own computers, and I had no idea what was going on, what was up from down, and I was frankly terrified that I'm in this mess and I don't know how to get myself out of it. Right? And that's been an experience that a lot of folks have had over the last few years as technology has really come full circle into the classroom in a way that it really wasn't before. So if technology is changing our schools, what does that mean? It means pretty simply that student device usage is increasing. Almost everyone we've talked to either has access to technology on carts, one-to-one labs somewhere in there. It's really rare we're running into schools that we don't have anything. So technology is increasing, and that usage in the classroom is coinciding with that. At the same time, devices are distracting. And it's important, before we get into those two bullets, that we understand devices are distracting for human beings, not for 13-year-old kids. Are they distracting for 13-year-olds? Absolutely. But they're distraction for all of us. We were talking at dinner last night about this new screen time report that Apple has released, right? And a lot of times we look at that and say, holy crap, I didn't know that I was looking at this thing for 2.5 hours a day, right? But it's true. We're thinking about distractions just for us, just like they are for the kids. But now when you put their 13-year-old brains into those distractions, maybe they result in Fortnite as opposed to Instagram or messages or things like that. But devices are distracting, and it's true for all of us. For students specifically, some studies have shown students checking their devices an average of 11 times a class for off-task things, and are spending about 20% of their time off-task. What is 20% in your world? 20% is 1 out of every 5 days you're losing to students spending off-task. That's a lot of time, right? How do we get some of that time back, right? Those devices are doing a lot of good, but they also do create some problems in the classroom. There are kind of 4 things that we base our feature set, our problems that we solve around. 1 is devices distract students. 2, off-task students aren't learning. 3, teachers have limited visibility, and so therefore class time is wasted policing those devices, the device usage, right? And that's not what we want our teachers to do, policing. We want them to be teaching and doing the things that they were hired to do and that they're good at, which is teaching their kids, right? So our goal here is in a lot of ways to help teachers regain control of that classroom in a way that doesn't lend itself to policing necessarily, but just to have the confidence and information they need to do their jobs effectively, okay? So we're helping keep students on task without teachers constantly having to monitor those devices and improve in some classrooms, okay? From a feature set standpoint, just to give you an overview of when they start talking about how it's impacting their classrooms, what it's actually going to show you as a teacher live, and then maybe some other things and use cases for what you're going to see. This is a live view of what teachers are going to see during class time. Again, Fortnite, I'm sure nobody has a problem with this with their kids, but if they're playing on it during class, you can see it happening right now, okay? You'll see that for all of your students in real time. You can focus on one student to bring up their big view, And the other part about this that's really important is that we're keeping a record of what they're doing during class time, so you can go back after a class and view it, right? So you don't have to stand at your desk and watch this happen. You can move freely and help individual kids. You can do direct instruction. You can do the things that you have to do from an academic standpoint, so that you don't have to stand here and watch this happen, because if you don't see it, you gotta catch it, right? So it's kind of the ideas of what we're gonna be doing and what Jake's gonna talk about here soon. Last part before getting into the CMS world is that we are used by single classrooms in an entire district. So if you're thinking about how this fits into your life and into your world as you're going back home, know that we can work for pretty much everybody in this room, right? So keep that in mind as you're coming to talk with us after the fact, down on the floor, afterwards, whatever it might be, okay? With that in mind, I want to turn it over to these guys to talk a bit more about the situation at CMS.
Thanks, Mark. So in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, we started a digital learning conversion, as every district in the state and the nation has been moving towards more digital learning resources. And the biggest part of that was our one-to-one initiative. We have really deployed Chromebooks across our district in a huge way. And my role in that was to ensure that teachers are able to use them appropriately, effectively in the classroom for learning, and how we make that happen. So we had a very aggressive timeline. We are now one-to-one 3rd to 12th grade with Chromebooks, 3 through 12. We have the world's largest deployment of Chromebooks. We've kept that record for the last couple of years. Eventually, Chicago is going to beat us out, or maybe some other district that has more students than us. But we definitely are all in with our Chromebooks. And we've done that in 3 short years. From 2014 to 2016, we got to that number of one-to-one, 3rd and 12th grade. So that brought some major growing pains. And initially, the concept of a screen monitoring solution really made me nervous, because I was researching different products, and all of the vendors, their focus was the teacher sitting at the screen, seeing what the students were doing, and yelling at the student right in real time. And you could have gotten that impression a few slides back that that's what Dyknow is. It's not. This is why I went to Mark and said, hey, what is your product? Tell me about Dyknow. Because I'm looking at some other vendors out there. And you've all researched, or if you haven't yet, do your research and see what they are. They're a nightmare. And I've had schools that purchased products that then they come at us in technology and say, you need to set up the server in our building so that we can actually use the product we just bought. So the expense, the setup, the configuration doesn't work on our products. They purchase things that don't work on Chromebooks. And those vendors just aggressively reach out to the school and take their check. I went to Dyknow. I learned about them. They didn't court me. So I learned about their product. Their product is amazing. It does exactly what I want it to. Yes, a teacher could sit at their screen and see what the students are doing here, but the best part about Dyknow is they don't have to. It can log where the student has been throughout the class period. No need to sit there and watch the screens. You can worry about teaching, and that's where I really wanted to get the teachers focused on. Let's use other learning experiences, create engaging experiences. You don't have to worry about where students are going online outside of what you want them to. If you're engaging them, there's no need for that. So Dyknow fits a really nice niche in how it handles screen time and how it handles the student-teacher interaction with those. So what we were looking for, we wanted to help prepare the students for NC test. So teachers want a lockdown browser experience. So we all know about the NC test experience for our state. And so they want to prepare them. So they wanted to give an assessment in Canvas or in Google Forms or wherever they are at school, and then they want it locked down. Well, Dyknow lets you set up a list of only these websites or where a student can be right now. You've got a lockdown browsing experience. So that was one of the really big things, like how are we going to prepare students for this? We need them to take tests without being able to go somewhere else and look things up. So making sure that that's going on. We want to help them facilitate learning and not policing. That was my biggest thing, making sure that we can just get logs of where students go, and the teacher can look at that after class instead of worrying about it during. Filtering the internet, classroom level. We all have Z-scaler, most districts do, and there's not a lot of nuanced filtering that we could do per school. So the nice thing about Dyknow is a teacher can set up a blocking plan, and when you're in my class, you can only go to these websites. Whereas the next teacher, I only want to restrict YouTube today. I'm going to let them go everywhere else. So whatever is needed by the teacher, they have granular control of where their students are while they're in class. And that's a really powerful feature. And they can also filter at the student level. Just block one student who cannot stay on task. They can get down to there. And then see what website students are on while they're in class. They can also monitor that. Things we didn't realize, but after we bought it, we're really happy about. We can monitor students even when they're out, when a teacher's out sick, or they're here at NCTIES. I know there are teachers in CMS right now that have come to NCTIES that are setting up their monitoring right now while the substitute teacher is in class, having the students work on the work while the teacher's away. Teachers still know what's happening, is the point. They could set up a blocking plan and say, no, you can only go to Canvas today, you can only do this in my class, and it works. So the teacher can be resting at home and feel better about taking sick days. And if you've been in the classroom, or you are today, you know how nice it is to be able to feel like I can take time off and not have more work when I come back. But it's not worth it. I'd rather be at school sick than take time off because it's just so much extra work. With Dyknow, you can really set up and facilitate class even though you're not present in the building. So that was a really big bonus there. Pushing links to students, so you can just say, I want you to go to this website, you can push it out with Dyknow, and it just launches on the student's screen. So really cool features that helped improve time on task, making sure they're where they need to be. And of course, restrict browsing to specific URLs. Also, not just blocking things, but we can also make an allow list. So everything's blocked, just these few websites are allowed. The technical parts of it for CMS, we're probably your largest deployment. I'm not sure of that, but I think we're pretty close to.
It's a safe bet when you say you're the largest Chromebook deployment in the world, then I'm guessing that.
So as a district, we've purchased Dyknow for middle and high schools. The elementary schools, the cost point for a district-wide deployment was a little bit higher than my higher-ups wanted to spend, but we have elementary schools that buy it on their own. Like they see a value in it, they want to use it, and that's just their 3rd to 5th grade that would be using it. They buy it because it is such an amazing way to help keep kids on task. But the technical side of that is super simple. Like we had one phone call, and they told us what feed they needed from our school. We send them it, and it works. Like it was that much. The other side of it for Google is we have to install the Dyknow extension, get student accounts, and make sure the Google admin settings are right. But that was a 10-minute process for me to do. Now it works. And when an elementary school purchases Dyknow, Mark sends me an email, I turn it on Dyknow for that school, and it works. I mean, it's the simplest deployment I have ever experienced on any product. It works really well right away. So all of the things that we can do, we can set up blocking plans across the district as well, and we can help really get teachers using it in no time. The instructional side is very simple too. After 15 minutes of showing what to do, teachers already see the value of it, they're ready to go, and there are many little features you can add in out of the mix beyond a 15-minute training, but the value of it is right there in the first 15 minutes. It's really easy to train on and get using. The nice thing about it is the analytic reports here. I say this is what I wanted to get to, why it mattered most for CMS to get Dyknow as opposed to other products, is those student reports. The concept of having, actionable data is the Dyknow expression, or term for it. You can get graphs and lists of every website, every page the students were at in your class. So a teacher doesn't have to be walking around the room or looking at the screen to know where students are. A teacher can say, this is the expectation, this is what we're doing, I'm going to be helping y'all. But if I suspect someone's getting behind, and I suspect that they're not where they need to be, I don't have to look at their screen and catch them in the act. I can just grab that report after class, call in the parent, and let's have a conversation about why your student isn't focused in class. It's not a technology issue. This is a behavior issue. If I tell them don't go here, focus on the work, I've given you a very rigorous learning experience. I don't need you going over here to look at Fortnite videos. You need to be on task. I don't have to be monitoring or policing all the time. I've got that report. Use that as the lever. It's a behavior issue. That's the biggest thing. Any technology issue, if we can shift the conversation to behavior, that's where we get to the win. Because that's what leadership at a school should know how to do. That's what they're there to help with, is addressing behavior, those behavior issues. Focus on the learning. So those, what was that? Yeah.
I've got a biology teacher, Miss Hanson, and she is the one, when everybody wants to know how to use Dyknow, I send them to her, and she has the structure of the class, so when she comes in, the kids come in, she pulls up the Dyknow screen, and the kids know exactly what it is and what it's doing. She leaves it up, and all she does is minimize it and leaves. And she's like, there are days I forget, but the kids think I have it up because they know I can see that report, and it's done. As a school leader, we had an incident last year where there was suspected some cheating I was able to go into Dyknow and see the patterns of where the kids were going during the test time and get those reports taken to admin done. And I didn't have to drill into their Google accounts to do that, which was nice.
Yeah. So as long as their teachers are setting it up, just turning on Dyknow when they start class, they've got those logs every time, no problems to be able to address them. So this is a infographic that we built. Really just, this is Dyknow training in CMS for the most part. The most important point is the green beginning of class. You simply log into Dyknow as a teacher and click Start Monitoring. So anything the students do in class is being monitored. At the end of class, if you want to, you can end monitoring, but as soon as students get to the next class period and that teacher starts monitoring, the students are taken out of your session and go on to that one. So just start monitoring is the most important piece. Everything else are just examples of things that can be done. Like you could send a custom message containing the URL you want them to do for the warm-up. Really easy time on task. Open your Chromebook, log in. The website should be on your screen. You just push that one URL. Give feedback to specific students as they're working. You can send a message as a teacher and say, hey, do this. We can have a whole class discussion and actually lock their screen. So I want your eyes up here. I don't want you looking at the screen. Locked. All they see is a black screen saying, is it blocked by Dyknow? They're not allowed to go anywhere. They can't use their computer for a minute. Heads up, we're talking. Okay? Release it, let them go back to work. So you check their understanding. You ask a question, there's a button in the Dyknow extension to actually give a thumbs up or thumbs down. And even you can create polls and whatnot. But it's really easy for the teacher to see as you're explaining something to the class. You can see that the percentage of thumbs up to thumbs down. Really understand what's happening and shift instruction as needed. And then you can enforce blocking plans, make sure students are on task while they're doing independent work. Just walking around the room, I know you're only allowed to go to these 4 websites, and so I can just walk away from the screen. I don't have to worry about what they're doing because I've set up a blocking plan. They can only be in these 4 sites, so let's just walk around the room and make sure that the students are on task and doing what I need them to. I've got Dyknow helping, but I don't have to be up here staring at my screen to make sure students are where they need to be. And then you can reflect on where they've been, what websites. Looking at the report helps us inform what additional websites we might need to add to Zscaler. Because as teachers see where students are going, they figure out what needs to be blocked district-wide. And they help inform our filter from that. Because those reports, they tell us every website that the students are going to. So we learn about things, can actually help us faster than Zscaler's algorithms to find inappropriate sites. So if you've been dealing with filtering for long enough, you know it's always a leapfrog event. You're always trying to find the next websites, and for a while students have access to them until the filter figures it out. So this just helps inform the filter even more when teachers look at those logs and see what students are doing. This has been quite valuable. Anything you would add to training?
I'm the one who trains the teachers, and the last thing they need is something else to worry about, something else to manage. The fact that it's thanks to Power School, the classes are automatically populated, literally, and I even have a bookmark in our bookmark bar for the teachers. They click the bookmark, there's their classes, they say first block, start monitoring, done. And from that perspective alone for the teachers, I mean, it's such a, my biology teacher is not my technical person. She's one of the ones I have to hold her hands. She's the biggest champion for it because it's so easy. I have a PE teacher who traditionally are not my technological people, they're down at the gym. And he says, hey, I got this second block class, they're killing me. He says, what can I do? And I said, here's an allow-only plan for the one site. He looked at me like, that's it. And done, and I saw him the next day, and he goes, boy, were they mad at me. I said, it was great, wasn't it? He goes, yeah. He goes, it took them all of 10 seconds to realize they couldn't go anywhere else. And you know, just the ease for the teachers, and then from my side, from the data, I mean, whenever my principal says, hey, I need to know something, I just drill in. The other thing that hasn't been brought up is there's some flexibility from the admin side of it. So we've got those students that are doing Edgenuity, they're on those different pathways, they kind of, the ones that tend to fall off into the cracks. We have one teacher that kind of collects those kids and says, you're supposed to be working on this. I created a class for her, and she's able to pull the kids she needs in on a daily basis.
It doesn't have to be just Power School synced classes, you can create unique ones.
She's got a custom class that week to week is different, but she's able to monitor, and those are the kids that need that extra monitor so they can have the conversations with the guidance counselors and with the parents. And she can say, look, you're failing history because you're screwed up on this. That's been wonderful for us.
Very common.
I was going to say the other half of that PowerSchool sync up is that we're also grabbing the student login information so that they don't have to opt in to being monitored. It just happens for them, right? Because obviously if they had a choice, the high likelihood that they would say, heck no, right?
Well, when Jake first said, hey, we're going to look at Dyknow, I did my research, and the first thing I kept finding was posts by students saying, we can't get out of it. We can't break it. It's an extension. It's installed. We can't get around it. And all the posts I were finding was that it's locked down and they can't do anything about it. And they go, that was the first thing I found.
Yeah, read the reviews from the Chrome Web Store for the app or the extension for Dyknow, and it's all student reviews and how upset they are about what they can't do. So I mean, that's a case where the reviews, negative reviews, indicate a good product.
Yeah, please read more into the 1-star review on Google because that's what it's from.
It's quite fun to see that. Yeah.
I may have missed it. On the feedback, did you say from student to teacher? Is that automatic real-time feedback?
Yes.
So that can minimize some.
Yeah, and it's the feedback it's meant as that just feedback. This isn't a grading situation. You're not creating a quiz in Dyknow.
I was referring more so like if the teacher sees them on an inappropriate site during class, they can provide private feedback just to that student.
It is directed and
okay.
immediate.
And that's fun too, because when you do that, you see the head pop up like, oh wow.
Right? And that's where the teacher's not in class even. They're here in a session right now in NCTIES. They can be logged in on their computer to Dyknow, see a student, see their screen, send them a quick message, hey, get back to work. This is your teacher. That changes how students behave. And you do build up a legend. As you keep doing this, the students believe you're watching all the time. That can really make a difference in how they behave if they assume they're always being watched.
Quick, so since it's a browser extension and you're on a Chromebook, it shuts the browser down if you want everybody's attention, or like, is that
The entire, like the whole screen goes black.
Okay.
So there's nothing they can do for a minute. It is locked down. That reminds me that I mentioned on the Chromebook, we are 1-to-1, 3rd to 12th grade. We do have CTE classes, and there is a Microsoft requirement for some of those. So we do have Windows desktop and laptop computers that students are using in some classes. CTE has purchased Dyknow for those machines as well. The teacher doesn't see any difference, right? They go to the exact same portal, whether the students are on a Chromebook or on a Windows device. They set up configuration the same way. Now, blocking on a Windows machine, you can actually block applications as well as to websites and browser. Chrome OS is browser for the most part. So what is it? A little bit different nuance of what the features are, but the actual interface is the same no matter what device the students are using. The teacher has the same experience for monitoring and configuring.
On the student reports, you said it shows how much time they were on task, how much time they were off task. How
Well,
long-
you define on and off
Sure,
task
but
by the
how long-
websites. You can
how
see each
long-
website by time.
How long is it archived?
And is it annual?
Yes, you will see kind of the current term. So the term is going to be based on what's in PowerSchool, right? You have, depending on how you do it, quarter length, trimester, semester, all year long courses. So you'll have it for the length of that term. We will archive that data at some point in time, but you might have to ask an administrator to go back and see it. The idea that you probably shouldn't have to go check data from last spring on what somebody's doing this fall, but if they're there during your class period, you're going to have it.
But it can be ready for parent conference and it can show a span of time.
For
Exactly
sure,
right.
yes.
And yeah, the idea that, I often get feedback that, oh, like, what if I don't want to look at it today after class? Like, then you don't have to do that, because it might be some sort of event happens where you're like, oh, well, let's go check Dyknow. Like, I have a student that fails a quiz on a Friday. Let me go see what they've done in my room over the past week. I can do that. Or I'm preparing for a conversation with mom. I'm going to see what they've done for the past month. Like, hopefully it doesn't take a month for that conversation to happen if it really needs to happen. My former teacher self talking about that, like we should probably nip that in the bud a little bit earlier than that. But the idea is that, yeah, as you're preparing for those conversations, you have the extra context of knowing what they were doing, not having to guess about it or assume. Because you know that if you start to assume, the kid's going to say, no, that's not what I did, and mom forgot to believe your kid and not you. And it just gives you some information. The data doesn't lie is a term we get from our teachers a lot. It's like it really helps with those conversations.
Well, those reports aren't just student-based, you can see an entire class. So if you were looking for those trends, you can look at a class and see as a whole what's going on.
And this year, this year the ability for me district-wide to delegate admins at each site. So each school, we have the tech coach role.
Yep.
Now that allows someone like Justin to be able to work with just his teachers at his school to be able to get those reports, to work with the principal and others, leadership at their school. It used to be just everyone needed to come to me if a principal wanted to see the student reports for all of their teachers. Now we can delegate some of that. So reporting is granular. It can be scoped down to the individual student and all the way up as needed. So quite neat.
We're a school that got the Verizon grant and
Yes.
all the middle school students have iPads. This seems a little bit like Apple Classroom on steroids.
A bit.
Yeah, so I was kind of wanting to maybe talk about the differences between the two a little bit, but mainly what I want to know is why did you guys choose to go with the Chromebooks and this versus iPads and the Apple stuff?
So we have had iPads in our district. We still do. We've had the Bills grant and all of that. So we started with iPads right before our Chromebook deployment, and this is iPad 2 generation, and Apple Configurator was there. It was in Cupertino when they were showing us a preview of Apple Configurator and how great it was going to be. It hasn't, frankly, scaled or been the tool we want it to be. The management for our size district of iPads is a nightmare. Now, our current superintendent would love to have them, but the configuration, the deployment, the usage is really difficult. And I know Apple, the classroom, I've heard about it. I don't have enough background to really speak on it. Chromebooks, deployment, there are 3 people district-wide for the largest deployment of Chromebooks in the world that manage the administration and the settings for those Chromebooks, the daily configuration or being ahead of updates and everything. Compared to we've got a good number of Windows devices in this district, but it's not 140,000 of them. And we have teams of people that manage them. So just the comparison says a lot. Management is very easy to deploy. Students can do everything that we need them to do, all the products that are available. I mean, with Chrome OS now, you can install Android apps, soon Linux applications. We can get CTE to stop liking Adobe so much. We can use GIMP, and that's a free application. I can GIMP on my Chromebook all the time. It's a wonderful editing tool. So there's a lot of the difference in what you can do on those devices is perception only. There is no, you can do do it all with a Chromebook, and Dyknow just helped seal the deal on functionality and being able to facilitate learning effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Google devotee, and but I'm also an Apple devotee, so it's great to hear you say that, because that speaks volumes that you've got 3 people managing all these Chromebooks, and you had a team of people doing that stuff.
I know at a school, we've got 2,600 students. My principal says, hey, we need to do this survey. It takes me a matter of minutes to change every device in the building. And I don't have to manually or physically touch them, which is awesome.
And to speak to the classroom piece of that, because I have knowledge of that, is that Apple prefers you would use their classroom tool on an iPad, because they enjoy being proprietary with a number of things, right? So Dyknow is typically being deployed on student Chromebooks, PCs, or Macs, not on iPads, because they prefer that you use that in that space. But yeah, it is, if we were allowed in the back door, essentially, we would essentially be classroom on steroids, but as it is today, you might as well be in the classroom.
And it's things like that. For me, you know, when you talk to vendors, you shake their hands, and sometimes you feel a little slimy after just that handshake. I went to Mark. Mark didn't come to me. He's never pushed a product. And we said, we've got some iPads too. And it was, yeah, we've got a solution, but you probably don't want it. And I totally appreciate that, honestly. And what they do is phenomenal. And the support, and it's about a relationship to do what's good for us and what's good for them. It's not slimy. There's too many of those out there on the floor.
I think being a former teacher helps with that.
Yes,
I've been on the other side of it.
I don't think I've met anyone on your team that hasn't been a teacher.
There are a few.
There's not many, from my experience.
So I'm in that unique position as a CTE teacher. We use Dyknow, I use it in my classroom, and for someone who actually uses this, I love it. I don't love it when my kids have to be on Internet Explorer, and they get around it by going on to Internet Explorer. We don't have the license for my classroom for Internet Explorer, so my question is, if we purchase the license, can you use it both? Like, can kids be on one, can they be on Chrome, and can they be on Explorer, and we see everybody? Or do you can only work one browser at a time?
So to answer that, let's talk about that afterwards, because what should be true is that if you're on a PC, there should be a separate install, and it sounds like you might be installing the Chrome extension on the PC,
Okay.
which will only be allowing you to see what's happening there, where we should be installing an MSI and a PC that will let you see that entire desktop. So let's chat about that.
Yeah.
And the install is different on Windows as opposed to Chrome OS.
Yeah, for that specific reason. Like, we can't just get away with doing an extension on a PC because there's just more to see in that environment. Good question. So this has been up here. I wanted to talk about a few other things. We've got about 15 minutes. We've already gotten the Q&A, which is fantastic. This is just an idea. Again, schools of all sizes, all the way at the top, as you suggested. That's a bit more than that now because of the elementary schools that come on board. And getting into a bit about that as well is just the idea that, as was true of CMS, we get in common situations where I often think of like the 7th grade as being like the group that people will often reach out to us first with. It's like, I'm a 7th grade teacher, I need this here. Whereas like if you're a first grade teacher, you may not have that immediate need or want, or even the device type. But what happens is that we'll oftentimes have the initial ask with the 7th grader or middle school teacher, and then as other people are like, wait, I can do that, I can do this, I can do that, I want that too, it grows out from there. So we have about 1/3 of our customers that will end up buying more licenses within the first year of their deployment, and that number includes the ones that are already maxed out. Like Gaston County, they kind of went all in from the beginning, whereas CMS, they did 6 through 12, and then they grew over time. So you talk a bit, I know you talked about the deployment side of that, but maybe just the organic growth of how teachers, talk about that and how it came to be.
Yeah, so we deployed for 6 to 12, and we've got some schools that are K-8s, and so they've got, because they have elementary or middle school students in their school, we just deployed Dyknow for them as well. So our K-8 schools have it. So now we've got 5th grade teachers at a K-8 school saying, hey, I've got Dyknow, and they say it to their friend, 5th grade teacher at a regular traditional elementary school, and like, I don't have Dyknow, why don't I? And then we have to have that conversation about, well, we couldn't afford to deploy it district-wide, didn't think elementary schools would really need or see a need for this right away. We've been wrong, and they have really pushed hard to get Dyknow in their schools. So we worked out a negotiation for a real easy way for the school to work with their budget and work with the PTAs, and it's a drop in the bucket for a lot of these schools to just say, we're all in, we want Dyknow as well. They fill out a purchase order, send it over to Dyknow, Mark tells me, hey, they bought it, and we turn it on. That conversation, I get elementary schools every week asking and working toward doing that. So I'm hoping someday it'll look like, we got 1.5 our elementary schools buying this, why don't we buy it district-wide? It really makes a lot of sense to do that. But the demand is definitely there. The elementary schools like it as much as the middle and high.
And that's really the point of kind of like, hey, that pain point tends to be the 7th grade teachers the most likely to reach out. Some of our highest usage teachers in districts that I work with commonly are 1st and 2nd grade teachers, because what ends up being true is that it's just as helpful for them as it is for anybody else. And I think that ties back to our different type of feature set, is that you may not have a 1st grade teacher that would use this if they're staring at they have to look at their screen on class 1, because like they're tending to be more mobile or helping out in centers or doing different things. That doesn't fit for that teaching style, and maybe why they don't come to us to begin with, because they don't know we can keep some of that data. Whereas with them, setting it, forgetting it, and coming back and seeing it later on, I often ask the question is like, would it be helpful for you to know the most common sites and apps your students use during class time? I've never heard somebody come back to me and say, no, I don't need that information, right? And so it may not be they're playing Fortnite, but I still want to know what they're doing. And in that way, over time, it becomes a lot less about my kids are a pain in the butt, they're playing games. It's more about what are they choosing to do during my academic time, and how does that inform what I need to do differently or continue to do the same, right?
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Question?
So on your Windows devices, for example, from a central office technical support area, the product we use, we can connect to the machines in a classroom and correct things or fix things on an individual teacher's computer. Is that possible with this?
So Dyknow is not going to give you that remote,
Okay.
remoting
Gotcha.
into a machine. No, it's not.
Yeah, and
designed for that.
that's right. There have been kind of traditionally, you think about our product suite, if you would, or set as classroom management software. It's quite often that, that feature set is often in addition to a separate tool like a remote desktop tool or a content filter tool. And because of that, there are some good things and bad things about that. Often is that, it's not always the first priority there, because, hey, we're a content filter, that's what we're going to put our focus into. It means a lot to us that we do classroom management, that's all that we do. And whether you're using it with one classroom or whether you're using it with 100,000 students, the product is the exact same and the support tier is the exact same. You're not getting treated any differently whether you're one or the other. So they have access to chat for their teachers, so would anybody else, right? It makes a lot of sense from an economies of scale standpoint, if you call up, we don't have to look to see what tier you're on. From a support standpoint, everybody is treated the same way, and that's really served our customers very well.
So live versus logs, if I'm the teacher looking at it, I see your screen. At the end of the class, I'm looking through a list of websites you went to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
so
not capturing.
It's got
What they're at.
it's got like a circle graph that'll kind of break it out by percentage of time per site as well.
yeah, and then if you need to, it's not like you're going back and watching a YouTube style video of what was happening on their screen the entire time. It's a list of things they're viewing. But if you need to know more, like, hey, I don't know what that site is, there'll be live links where you can actually click back in to see exactly what they were seeing, just to verify. Because I mean, it's often true that teachers are finding content that they didn't know existed that they want to share with the class, and that may be what takes them down a rabbit hole, not just what's going on with Fortnite or anything else. So,
Does it automatically categorize, like you're on YouTube, so these are the video type sites?
yeah, it's going to sort by domain first, and then you click into YouTube and you see what's going on. Because YouTube is a perfect example. Was talking to somebody about it downstairs. Is that some of the best content in the world is on YouTube, and some of the worst stuff
in the world.
at the same. Right? It's like there's a wide range of academic use cases for YouTube, and so what you probably don't want to do is just block YouTube at a filter level, right? You may have allowed small percentage of your teachers that are asking you to do that, and some have been forced into that situation. What you'd more likely want to do is allow you to, and then tell the teachers who are a little uneasy about it, if you need to today, you can block it, right? And then again, the idea is today. It's not you're setting up a global plan for your classroom that's true, and then I can let things open from there. It's like, if you want to block them today, you've got to go do that manually, because we don't want you to get in the habit of blocking every single day, because one is, once they know what you do, they're going to be less likely to, the word spreads and grows, and the students are like, oh my God, they're watching me wherever I go. A lot of the bad behavior will be cut out, so then you can be a lot more specific about, I need a block for a test or a quiz, and not just like feel like I have to do it all the time. The legend grows, I should say.
Yes.
Go ahead.
We have a mixture of school-issued Chromebooks, but then we also bring your own device.
Yep.
So is it a case where we can do both, or?
It's a good question. Out in Beaufort, they have a situation similar to that. There are going to be just difficulties managing a student-owned device population, right? We're asking that they install something on their machine that they're effectively going to see as spyware, and having to manage usernames and that whole process, it just becomes a tricky thing. I'm happy to talk a bit more about that on how it can work in your environment, but it tends to be true that Dyknow is deployed on school-owned and managed machines, because you just run into situations where it becomes difficult. Students can tamper with those installs, things like that, yeah.
Chromebook's a little different because it's installed in the user, right? So even if a student used a personal device, a personal Chromebook, if they logged in with their, it's all, because the extensions come in for that user based on the user account. So the install happens because they're logging in with their CMS account. But if you bring a personal Chromebook, you can log in with a Gmail account or any other, then yeah, there's no way to use that. And we do have a guest network, and some schools do allow students to bring in their own devices, but then when we started saying with Dyknow, if they're all on the Chromebook, you can use Dyknow, and it changes their approach. They often utilize personal devices a lot less as a result, once they understand that.
The other conversation has been then teaching the teachers how to log into Chrome, and the difference between having multiple Chrome accounts and different browsers.
We have about 5 minutes left. Another question I wanted to ask you, Jake, because I found the evaluation of software to be a hot topic lately, because different schools do it different ways. There's some best practices out there, but it's kind of, well, this is how our district does it. This is how our district does it. You talk a bit more about how, once you decided to engage with us, how you went about evaluating and what your buy-in process was with the principals and things like that.
So one thing to consider, there's districts typically need to put out an RFI and then an RFP. Our configuration with Dyknow, price point is low enough, we didn't even need to do that. So we researched, we looked at different tools, and I involved teachers and school leaders and got the whole cross-functional team together to review products. None of them check the boxes like Dyknow did. When it comes down to it, it's features that are trying to really reach over to the 90s and talk about how you should be an admin and be able to remote into machines and doing those kinds of things. But that's not what today's teacher really needs. Most of today's teachers. Now, I know in CTE or in a computer science class, it might be a little different what we need to do. I don't need it.
Scanning my face, it wasn't seeing your face.
Technology, yes. I wonder if it'll figure out how to scan my face if I can figure one. Anyway, what Dyknow does is far more modern than other vendors that I found, other products that we looked at. It's just the price point, the service, and what it does so well, and it's not trying to be everything. There are many other screen monitoring solutions.
And to your point about tech coaches,
Yes.
and then also being able to see the full URL, like when we're making product decisions about how to improve upon those things, because obviously if we stop developing today, that could be true of us 5 years down the road, and we're very well aware of that. In today's modern software world, you have to continually be evolving. So the first place we'll always look for what's next is what have our customers asked for, and what do they need. It's always our first place. We're not trying to invent new things or crazy things that people haven't thought about. It's like often the best ideas are things that our teachers are saying, hey, can you guys do this or can you do that? So we're keeping a record of all that, and we're always using that to inform what else we could or should do.
They listen to feedback. Teachers can even
That's
open up
right.
the chat and give feedback.
That's right.
You know, I'm not Jake, I'm not at the top doing what he's doing at the school. When I contact them, they don't care that I'm not him. It's like, what do you need? And they're willing to help me with what I need, not having been the district leader that he is. And that's nice. I appreciate that.
And as Jake said, that takes so much pressure off of you to feel like you need to be like the single point of contact for the project. It's like, hey, if you have a question, we'll get you an answer to that question. You don't have to worry about who you are, what you do, and it's just, we're here to help.
We do have a help desk queue for Dyknow.
Jake, you
It's very quiet.
mentioned price point. Is the licensure for the product per school, per student, per device, per student? Okay. And in that, you said it's a quick 15-minute tutorial. Does that include anything from the Dyknow as far as any kind of professional development?
Yep. All new onboardings will receive training.
Okay.
Obviously, the model that they've come up with is that they took information from our training to kind of condense it down to a certain area. And it's important that we have both, right? Because we want to make sure that people have knowledge and can ask questions at the beginning of an onboarding, but we also know that not everybody can be at those initial sessions. Turnover happens, and somebody who was trained last year may not have that knowledge this year. And so making sure that it's easy enough to learn in 15 minutes, but also being able to do the deep dives at the beginning, we really embrace kind of the hybrid of that model. We eventually, the real story there is we want each school or district to own that onboarding process, and our training is really about helping them best own that process for what it's like to be a teacher or an admin in that district.
The size of our district, the number of 10,000 teachers district-wide, we have to train the trainers and then distribute. So, but yeah, Dyknow does provide really good training for it.
Well, thank you all for being here. I know we're right on time. I think the next session in here is in 15 minutes or so feel free to stay around. And then our booth down there, if you want to see kind of a live demo, is available. What's our booth number?
940.
940.
Yeah, it's on the handout on the way out.
Cool.
940.
Yeah, I got one here.